Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted today to be here with two guests, Alex Lugosch and Ilya Druzhnikov. And they run a firm called True PMF. Now, you can go to this firm, truepmf.com, but I'll warn you in advance the website, the only thing it says is by referral only. That's it. So if you want to actually engage their help, you're going to do a little bit more work and ask for an introduction. I guess you could ask me because I know them, but you're going to have to find your way to them because it's an interesting approach. We can talk about that. So, Alex and Ilya, thank you guys for coming. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
All
Thanks,
right.
Will.
So, Alex, why don't I just call on you first?
Sure.
Walk us through the service that your firm provides. Why don't we just start there?
Yeah. So True PMF is a rapid prototyping and discovery service for companies who are emerging in markets. So startups, companies who are more established who want to release a new product or test in a new market. And they don't have 6 to 8 months to try new experiments for product market fit or the tooling to handle that. And I'm actually going to turn that over to Ilya because he really has a concise way of explaining that.
I actually have a story that all of us can identify with. As entrepreneurs, so both Alex and I are our background is purely entrepreneurial. We've been founders of several companies, Alex in fintech, myself in both AI and sales acceleration. And one thing that we've both experienced and seen again and again and again is you have an idea of what is going to sell because you've made some network deals, you've convinced a couple of your friends to buy it, and maybe you've even pitched it as product market fit to your VC, but it ain't. And when you really start going after it, you believe it. So you hire a sales rep, you tell them this is who you're going after, this is kind of your script. And for just about 6 months, you hear wave after wave of stories, excuses, exceptions, promises, etc. And then in 6 months, you scrap the experiment. You realize that this wasn't a product market fit. Fire the rep, and you're back to the drawing board.
All
And
right.
most emerging companies have time for one or two experiments like that because each one takes 6 months. And if you don't hit the jackpot, you're out of business. So, what we do in the simplest possible word is we shrink the time from guessing that something might be a product market fit to actually knowing whether it is or is not from 6 months to a couple of days for any given audience.
Now, if someone asked me to explain what you guys do, I'm going to share my understanding and you guys can correct it in
Sure.
terms of what it means in practice, right? So my understanding is the two of you will work with a founder, typically with the founder of the company, and you will say, okay, who's your target audience? You'll use ZoomInfo or various other sort of content info sort of things like Apollo perhaps to get a list of people that fit that profile. And then using a cold calling tool, several that you've used, you'll start actually dialing those folks. And one of the two of you will initially will take that call and it rings, someone picks up and you'll just start in with a pitch and see how the person responds directly to potential buyers. And then you'll test out different ideas, iterate different pitches to potential clients, mainly doing cold calling. We're not talking about emails, we're not talking about in-person workshops, right? The main way you're testing these is by cold calling, getting people's reactions, and you're also training that founder to do cold calls herself or himself, right? So that's kind of my understanding of helping them both get the skills, but also vary the pitch to see what is resonating with potential buyers.
That's broadly right. So we often will stack rank lists. We'll say, hey, here's, 20 audiences we think we're going to test in the next 20 days. Tell us which ones you think are going to prioritize well. We do start pitching them. We'll figure it out. And basically, each experiment takes about 2 sessions of an hour each. At a certain point, we do turn over, we call it the ball. So somebody will say, oh, I call the ball, and that's when you're going to pick up the next call. We will turn it over to the founder. That's just so that they understand how to do this, but they're going to hard fail a few times until we teach them and they get a little bit of a feel of it. And yeah, we use several list building services, several data validation services. We do have a couple different dialers. We're always trying to build extremely tight lists, and that's how we're able to access lots of people at the C-suite that most of these founders can only dream of contacting. And then they find out, within one or two calls that those people are picking right up, and they're talking to the people they wish they could have gotten hold of for months.
So let's get super practical and specific. Let's say that you're, explaining to a founder how this is going to work. Walk us through the steps. So step one, figuring out what the sort of profile is that you want to call. But let's get into sort of walking us through what it's actually going to look like when we have this 1 hour dialing session and what the person's going to do. So Ilya, you want to walk us through?
Yeah, I'll give it a whirl.
All right.
So first of all, in the initial session, when we get together, we sit down with the founder and we say, hey, there's absolutely no point in us telling you what we do. And this is the funny thing about doing this conversation, because normally we would be showing it. All Imagine right. you have a company and would be like, hey, Will, so who do you think you sell to? And they would define it. And in real time, we would go to ZoomInfo or one of the other databases, and we'd build a list. We'd find direct phone numbers, and we'd have a little bit of back and forth, find direct phone numbers for 80 to 100 of these people, and load them up into a massively parallel dialer. So when I say we've built a pretty good tech stack around that, we've developed a lot of expertise with the tools that are out there. Our stack is enterprise grade, something that very few startups can afford. And then the session begins. And then we're all looking at a shared screen, and we're all on a Zoom call like this, and we're talking, but all of a sudden there's a beep. And all of us fall silent. And one of us, whether Alex or myself, and usually we alternate in the beginning, will say, hi, this is Joe Blow calling from company X. Do you have a second to talk, or are you in the middle of putting out fires?
Yeah.
And they'll giggle. Sometimes they'll say, I'm always putting out fires. What's this about? Look, I'm going to try to make it as relevant to you as possible. Company X solves this problem for you. And if I said that we could deploy it in the next 2 weeks and save you a bunch of time and a bunch of money, but most importantly, it's totally intractable and it has impact on the bottom line, would that be interesting? They'll say, maybe, or they'll say, bugger off. I'm absolutely not interested. And then we'll move on to another call. By that time, we have a model that is really well trained on the customer's business. So by the time that conversation is finished, the pitch is finished, the transcript goes directly into the model, into the AI model, and the model produces an analysis of the conversation. This is what worked, this is what didn't work, these are the things that resonate, and this is a follow-up email that you should send to them. And we move on. Yeah.
Let's say that you are running this dialer for an hour, right? Mm-hmm. Typically in an hour, how many pickups will you get? And of those, how many people just sort of hang up right away? How many short conversations do you get? And then how many meetings might you actually schedule? Or is that in fact the next step of saying, what's sort of the outcome of this cold call? What's the ideal outcome?
Yeah. So in a typical calling session nowadays, we're getting sometimes upwards of 14, maybe 15 connects, sometimes more. Yeah, it's gotten it's increased lately. We've changed some of our tech stack. So that said, the deeper you're going to go in different conversations depends a little bit on our skill, because we do this every single day. And we have honed a craft around keeping people on the phone, having them, stay and give us information. But if we're off target, which is to say we're not pitching the right thing. There's something where founders will be like, oh, if you see it, you'll believe it. Or if we're vague, or we really haven't narrowed in on the feature sets that are relevant, we'll get more quick hangups. I'm not interested. I'm the wrong person. Take me off this list, whatever. When you start getting closer to the target, the conversations become more rich. There's a lot more follow-up emails. There's a lot of scheduled demos. Let me refer you to the right person. I'm not exactly the right person, but I could see how this will impact our business positively. It's not binary necessarily, but the difference between quick hangups and tell me more is stark. And then we do feed these things, like Ilya said, into our model, because one of the things that we often, like a signal, for example, in this we'll be calling CEOs of e-commerce. This happened a week ago. We were calling CEOs of top tier direct to consumer e-commerce companies, online e-commerce. We're reaching the CEOs. We're pitching. They're giving us the 6 seconds, 10 seconds to open. They're going, I'm not interested, and they're hanging up, which means like they kind of know what we're talking about, but we're not nailing the feature sets and we're not making it relevant to their business. CEOs have certain things they care about. CTOs have things they care about. Chief revenue officers have things they care about. And they're not always universally the same depending on the product, whatnot. And those are just examples. So you can tell when somebody wants to listen, but you're not making it relevant. And that's a really good signal that you maybe have the wrong audience, for example. So it's iterative until you start landing on the audience that's like, tell me more. I care about this. This is something I'm interested in. I'm not exactly the right person. I know exactly who the right person is. I'll refer you. Those things happen all the time, but that's when you start to narrow in on the bullseye.
And in that specific case, it's often a single word. In that case, Alex came up with the word tariffs.
Yeah.
And the moment you talk to CEOs of e-commerce companies today, in the next week, and this is maybe useful for some of your listeners, and you say tariffs, and you say, you got to be able to turn on a dime, then all of a sudden their ears perk up.
And they told us, in this case for this client, they go, I'm not exactly the right person. I do care about the tariffs, but this specific implementation is a CTO thing, right? So then we shift gears. We took Ilya built the exact same list of companies, but only dragged up their CTOs. We pitched it to them, and all of a sudden we're getting, I'm interested. I care about this. Tell me more. I want to see a demo. And that's when you know you're on target.
Now, one thing that you told me before, which I thought was very interesting, which I'd never heard anything like this ever before, where the way that you two partner, and when you're doing these, you'll partner, one of you will take one and then you'll alternate, and you don't say anything. You don't give the person feedback. Say a little bit about that.
That's actually, we would highly recommend it to anyone who is learning to pitch their product. Is go one after the other. Make sure that there's no option. You have to go next. And then all that you do is you grab whatever ideas and thoughts that you liked from the previous person's pitch, but you don't give them an attaboy. You don't say, this was great. You don't say anything positive or negative, because pitching in general is really friggin' hard. It's emotionally draining, and it's not only emotionally draining on us, it's emotionally draining on people who are listening to us as well. Like, our customers come out and they're like, I'm covered in sweat. I don't understand how you do this. I've not heard. Our sales reps have been pitching this for years and they wouldn't be able to do a cold pitch. But it's hard. And so the trick to getting better is getting no feedback whatsoever. It's weirdly enough. It's just
You'll hear the elements that are working in the last person's pitch, and you'll hear the ones that aren't. On rare occasion, we'll say something to each other, just because we have done enough of this, but it's only around like technique. Like this morning, I said to Ilya, I think he did a couple in a row because I was listening. I told him, I said, sharpen your pencil, right? And his next pitch got there quicker and they were listening, right? So just little cues, like So, but we do go back and forth on it, and you learn very quickly that way, because you're watching somebody else hard fail or hard succeed or something, and you're like, oh, I could take that. They like that. They don't like that. I'll go now, and you get better fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting kind of general principle almost that applies to other situations of listening to each other, but not giving feedback, but then alternating so you can kind of incorporate it. And it's an interesting approach.
But
Okay.
You're also listening to each other's tone of voice.
Yeah.
So I may hear Alex go from, "Hi, this is Alex Lugosch. I'm calling from company A."
Yeah.
And then this particular audience has a specific dislike of enthusiasm. I mean, if you're calling CTOs or if you're calling VCs, sounding enthusiastic is the kiss of death.
Really?
Yeah.
And the way you want to really talk to them is like, "Hi, this is such and such calling from such and such company."
And know that these techniques are not because cold calling is not usually a way you're going to scale your sales, but these are just techniques to get them to give you the pertinent information around the messaging and product features and whatnot that you'll be able to put in outbound campaigns that are actually scalable, right? Because maybe you'd inform like your emails or your LinkedIn messages or whatever, your conference, something collateral a little bit, but we use the pitch techniques just to get to the place where we go, okay, these are the things they really care about, right? So that if I do, find a market where I know it's going to hit, I could say it in any number of ways and they're going to respond.
In fact, almost none of our clients, when we find product market fit, what happens next is the interesting part, right? Because somewhere midway through the process, we'll say, "Hey, this is the first audience. This is the first PMF audience we've discovered. You should engage a professional LinkedIn marketing team, and you should use the exact bullet points that we've discovered and advertise the living bejesus out of those people." And all of a sudden, they're seeing 8 or 10 or 15 meetings a month where they can't keep up.
Yeah.
Whereas before their campaigns didn't work.
All right, I'm going to put you guys on the spot, and
Sure.
because I know that you are.
We would love to be put on the spot.
I know this is what you do all the time. So just to give me and the listeners like an example of what you're doing. So let's turn back the clock to something like 2018 or 19, and let's say that you are serving Zoom. The tool that we're using right now for this video conference that everybody now is familiar with. And let's say that you've gotten through your quick opener. "Hi, I'm Alex Lugosch from Zoom. Are you working on something right now, or do you have a minute? Or, are you fighting fires?" And they say, "Go ahead." So then what I'd like to hear is a few different iterations of how you're testing the different product features and ways of explaining it. So after I say, "Okay, yeah, go ahead," maybe Ilya, you start. Explain
of course.
to me what Zoom is. I'm like the CEO, or I'm whoever you want me to be. Tell me who am I? Chief Technology Officer, whoever. And what are you gonna say? What's the sentence?
No, tell me who you are. I don't need to tell you. You tell me. If you're putting me on the spot, put me on the spot.
All right, I'm the CEO of a mid-sized company. Let's say you've decided to sell to mid-market private equity owned portfolio companies, and so
John, look, John, talent is the oil of the 21st century. And the oil like regular oil, it doesn't spring from the place that's nearest to you. You have to go out and look for it. And when you look for talent, you're going to find it all over the world. And if you want to get those people to work with you, they're going to need a way to interact with the rest of your team. And we have a solution for that. Does the idea of having the best team in the world that's working together as if they were in the same office sound appealing? That would be my first pass.
Yeah, and then I would pick it up and say something like, "John, there are lots. You've heard of Skype. There's Google, Meet. There's a zillion different video conferencing systems. But do you have one that scales and is easy to use like those, but can have 30 people on a meeting in different time zones? And I don't know, a collection of backgrounds and features that, make it better than whatever, right? It doesn't time out. Pick your features, right? And then we would pitch it that way. And if that didn't work, we would try something else.
And then I would say, I would pick it up on Alex's. And if none of these things worked, I would say, look, you're really tired of hearing excuses from your CRO. You're not hitting numbers. And the reason you're not hitting numbers, they say, is because they have to fly people all over the place to have meetings. Is this true? I don't know. You suspect it isn't. What if you implemented a system like ours on a small part of your team and had them have their pitches over Zoom? And just over the course of a couple of months, compared the efficiency of a sales team that's running remote pitches versus the sales team that's flying all over the place.
Yeah.
Just give us a chance. Doesn't cost very much.
And if that didn't work, we would say something like, we would call a CTO and we'd say, hey, Steve, look, your customer support is all over the phone. But in 2018, people really want to see face-to-face. They want to see really good screen sharing with high quality markup tools, so that they can actually guide people through customer success. We have a tool that does that. Is that something that's interesting? In fact, client A, B, and C has seen, a 30% reduction in return support calls, something to that effect, right? And we would go back and forth until we find something that resonates.
Yeah. So then you're hearing the feedback of what whoever that target is that you're saying, and maybe they're saying, well, that's really the chief technology officer who owns all our video conferencing tools, or maybe not. Maybe it's yeah, that would be good for my, or you're hearing, it's not really that. So then you're testing different, focusing on different features or different aspects of the product or different ways of explaining it until you find something that resonates with people, and then you kind of double down on that.
And that's the interesting part.
Yeah.
Alex said it's not binary, but this is where it is completely binary.
Yeah.
When you strike gold, when you hit that product market fit resonance, you can hear it as clearly as you can hear a bell. It's just amazing. And it's like one of the most satisfying things about our business. And it's also one of the most depressing things about our business, because just as when it's clear that this is not working, we stop the experiment. The moment we know it is working, we also stop the experiment. Because our job is not to produce leads for you, right? Our job is to find as many of these specific concrete pairings of audience and pitch and product features that resonate as product market fit. If we find one, it's great. If we find 2 or 3 for you in the course of a 20-day sprint, then you really feel like you've gotten your money's worth.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon, once we're over the target, it's not uncommon for our clients to, make back well what they paid us just in a few meetings, because, we happen to have booked them a few demos and a few meetings and some follow-ups that turn into revenue, but that is not the goal. That is a side effect of a successful process.
Now, out of this process, you're just helping to get them to the right product market fit. Mm-hmm. Do your clients find that continuing to do this cold calling is an effective business development strategy?
A lot of people do maintain a continuing relationship with us, and Ilya can sort of elaborate more on that, though.
So after the sprint, again, almost nobody decides that cold calling is their golden ticket to prosperity, because it ain't. You are not going to find sales reps that can pitch at the level that we can engage them, not for any reasonable amount of money. So I'd say it's almost never going to happen. We've seen it maybe once or twice. Yeah. What does happen, however, is that everything that we've done turns into a marketing strategy. And it also turns into a design of a sales team. And then they will typically maintain a relationship with us, because we do a sprint for a month, right? Every day for 20 days. but afterwards, they'll typically work with us for an hour a week indefinitely to test new ideas. Because as a CEO, you're always coming up with new things. And you're like, hey, is this going to work? Is this going to work? And that's how the relationship often continues.
So you're finding that most clients, even though this cold calling will, get you up to 14, pickups per hour, and once you land on the right language, some of those will convert into meetings. You typically saying you don't find the founders continuing to just do that, on an ongoing basis.
Some do it themselves. When the very few that pick up the skill, they will pick it up and they will do it like clockwork a couple of times a week themselves.
All right.
However, there's no way on God's green earth. So let's go through the numbers. Let's say we get 10 connects.
Yeah.
When we're on and we're good, out of those 10 connects, 4 are going to turn into conversations, maybe 5. 5 if others are going to be busy. So we call them engagements. Okay. And 2 will turn into meetings. Best case scenario, 1 or 2 will turn into meetings and follow-ups, right? If you put even a very skilled, we're not salespeople, right? And neither one of us has a background in sales. However, we're founders. We're sales-first founders, and we have this experience. If you put a sales guy doing this, from my experience, and I've trained salespeople, maybe they will convert out of those 10 connects. They will connect 1 into some sort of an engagement or conversation. And it will take them 5 or 6 to actually get to a meeting. And that's crap, and they're burning through leads. That's not the way you want to handle your sales. Ultimately, you want to create inbound. You want to figure out, but just the fact that we've done this, we've just limited your marketing focus from this entire world of possibilities to sometimes laser focused 2,000 people that you can advertise to directly on LinkedIn or on take their names and advertise to them on Facebook, whatever you want.
Yeah, or create an experience at a conference that they're going to care about, that will resonate, something they can take back, you name it. You can make ads that matter, finally, right?
So this is really a way to help your clients might have multiple different ideas about the persona. Well, maybe the CEO, maybe the chief technology officer, maybe the head of marketing, and you're helping them narrow in to say, no, this is the right role at the right kind of company, the right size of company, and here's the message that resonates with that person, so that they can then go off and do other types of marketing approaches to
when we have clients who call us back. It's usually, hey guys, I want to test this audience and this audience. Can we do 3 days? Right? Or 3 hours, or whatever it is, right? They've gotten some tidbit or feedback or something that gives them an idea, like maybe this, and we'll test it. And if it works, it works. And if not, we've saved them going down a rabbit hole. So those are usually what re-engagements look like.
Interesting. Okay. And you're not super optimistic about the ability of a sales development representative making outbound calls, or talk to me about what you see companies like. Is that big waste of money? Is that typically really tough to make work?
So if you don't know your messaging exactly, and I'll back up. If you don't know your messaging exactly, you're just doing spray and pray. And that's true with email, that's true with LinkedIn campaigns, that's true with anything. You're just putting out lots of things, hoping you get feedback. If you put a relatively unskilled SDR on cold calling to decision makers, unless it's a really basic thing, you're going to be spending a lot of money on that. There are obviously companies with outbound sales teams that cold call. That is a thing. But in our experience, we have a company right now, actually, a company that's they have 400 clients across Europe. They've raised probably over $50 million. They're big in their space, a name brand that people recognize. The CEO goes, look, my regular SDRs can't even do this, what you guys do, right? They're just not that effective, right? Maybe they get one here or there or whatever. And he's like, there's 6 of them and none of them are that good. Because especially in complicated B2B product spaces, even like a cold pitch where they're repeating the same thing, not that relevant. If you're using a different tool, email, LinkedIn, whatever it happens to be, and you've packaged it right and it has all the trimmings with the right messaging, that can be much more effective for the dollars and time you're going to spend on it.
Yeah.
The people we see who are effective at this, aside from us, and this is where I was going to draw the connection, their chief revenue officer has showed up to every single call we've done, I think. We've even said, hey, call the ball. He calls the ball. He can pitch it. Their low-level salespeople cannot. They're not adaptable enough. But you can't have 6 chief revenue officer caliber people at a multinational, tech startup that does B2B sales run your sales team. You can't afford it.
No.
And they won't do it. They're not going to be paid on poor commission to do this. So finding the kind of talented people you'd need to do it, and then, Ilya likes to call this like it's the lowest of the low, right? It's the thing that people hate the most. They're like, oh my God, cold calling people are the worst, which is why it's a good prototyping tool, because you have an audience that immediately hates you. Right. So if it actually,
that's exactly right. They're absolutely loathe the very idea.
Yeah, they are predestined to dislike the idea that you even cold called them. They get 20 cold calls a day. They're furious. And if you can get them to actually respond, you've got something good. Do not give that to a 22-year-old who just graduated from Vassar or whatever. Like, don't give it to that person, right?
Yeah.
I don't care how competitive they are.
Huh. Can you, in a sanitized way, give any examples of your clients that you've served and how you helped shape what they initially thought was their product offer?
I've got a great example from last week. So one of the things that our clients often do is they say, we're really interested in this audience. And in this case, it was high growth emerging e-com brands. Well, we did, I think, 3 days or 2 days of calling them, and we were just getting our teeth kicked in hard. And, people are picking up and CEOs are picking up, and we don't do this often, but Ilya and I sort of had to hit the pause button, and we did this offline in our sessions. We said, what is going wrong here? And at first we were like, it's us, our pitching is wrong and this and that. And then finally we realized, no, of course they want high growth e-com brands. That's great. All of their early clients were high growth e-com brands. And they go, oh, we started with them when they were 30 people. Well, that's different than going after companies that are 200 or 250 people that are still high growth. They don't need your tool that reduces costs and does things more efficiently because they're growing, right? They don't care about that at all. The people that need efficiency and to remove software stack and have better, analytics or whatever it happens to be in this case are established e-com brands that are looking for margin expansion, not market expansion, right? So we fired up a new list of established e-commerce brands that we know are looking for margin expansion in the space, and immediately it's relevant, right? You're not going to usually think your way out of it. We tested it. Like we considered the why, of course. That's why we came up with the new audience. But as soon as we tested it, it hit. Then those CEOs told us, go talk to my CTO. This is going to be even more relevant for them. We took the exact same list. Ilya built it with CTOs. We tested with them. It worked much better. Now
and then we tested it. I mean, here's the sweet part, and I'm not even sure that we should be talking about it, but it's really interesting because next thing we did, we called a whole bunch of private equity partners who are operating partners specifically in the tech stack, and it turned out that that was the actual gold mine. And all of a sudden, instead of selling to one company at a time, we're potentially selling to people who are in the position to implement the solution across the board in 10 or 15 brands that they own. Suddenly this gets really interesting. Another example, a little bit different and at a slightly different scale. So imagine a much smaller company. They've got 20 clients that they've accumulated over the last 10 years. And those 20 clients are all big enterprise clients. And now they are looking potentially at selling to private equity. And there's a significant amount of interest among PE firms in buying them. The CEO is claiming that there's a new product that's coming out, and that new product is going to bump revenue from X to Y in 1 year, and everybody's super excited about it. So the founder of the company, who has a controlling interest, needs to make a decision: trust the CEO and wait, or not trust the CEO and pull the trigger on the acquisition now. So he desperately needs to find out, is this product that's being promised to him and it's coming out in a month, it's true, is it going to be the kind of seller? Or is it better to sell on the promise of this product? And so we hop on the phone and we talk to a bunch of potential clients, and forgive my language, lo and behold, they don't give a shit. It is highly relevant information for him.
Yeah. Do these calls before the company even builds the product?
Like, oh yeah. In fact,
sure.
We're doing it right now. It's called sell it, then build it. And and customers who try it on other things, they're like, wait a second, why the hell would we build it until we actually figure out the exact audience and the exact feature set and the exact everything?
Yeah.
And how do those conversations go? Hey, I'm with XYZ company. We have this product that does this. Oh, sounds good. Oh, can you send me a link?
Yeah, and we send them the information, because you can build. Again, these days you can build the information of the feature set in one pager really quickly. And if there's interest in moving forward, then you say, we will arrange to do a demo whenever we're ready to do a demo. That's the reality.
All right.
We don't lie. We never lie. One of the things actually that's absolutely critical to this process is you have to figure out a way of doing this so that every single word that comes out of your mouth is actually literal truth. The impression that people get from that literal truth is not necessarily our responsibility, but we cannot lie.
Yeah.
All right. Both of you have alluded to it, but I did want to get into the conversation here, at least briefly, a little bit about your background before True PMF. So, Alex, you want to go first? Just give us a little bit of a background of what you've done before this.
I was a fintech founder. Before that, I worked in B2B wholesale, e-commerce. I sold a company in that space. Then I was a fintech founder. Then I was an executive at a company in the B2B credit space. And I was, we'd reached a fundraising milestone, and I felt like that was a decent time to start looking around. And Ilya had been a client of mine when I had a fintech startup. And we'd stayed in touch over the years, and I called him and I said, hey, I'm ready to do something else. I'm looking around. And he said, well, I've been messing around with this idea and this thing. And he said, I could refer you to some friends of mine if you want to keep doing strategy at the executive level. And I was like, I think I'd rather do something more interesting. I said, why don't we try doing this thing together, and I'll bring my talents to it and you bring yours, and let's see if we can really level it up. And that was 4 months ago. 3 months. 4 months ago.
4 months ago.
4 months ago. Right. And about 6 weeks after that, we started booking like a significant amount of new business. And been great. We've been very, very fortunate. So that's sort of the short, the Cliff's Notes version.
And how about you, Ilya? What's your backstory?
I'm just a serial founder, right? And because I'm probably profoundly unemployable in every way, shape, and form. Started my first company right out of grad school. A bunch of friends and I built a very early, one of the first product recommenders that was out there. Sold it, and then we were bums, otherwise known as angel investors, for a while. Then, by some random coincidence, I ended up investing and starting a company that ended up being the first sales acceleration, like true sales acceleration tool, called Connect and Sell. And that's kind of where I got super interested in where the rubber hits the road, which is like, what does product market fit look like? And then I was an angel investor for another chunk of years and realized that the thing that it seems both Alex and I truly love doing is working with the founders and CEOs and helping figure out this exact piece of the problem. We don't enjoy hiring a lot of people. We don't enjoy managing a lot of people, but really getting in there and figuring shit out is amazingly fun. And the fact that we get to do this day in and day out is like, it's kind of magic. And both of us have done this a bunch for free, so kind of fun to do it for money.
All right. So at the top of the show, we gave your website. I'll mention it again, truepmf.com. But it does say not much of a website. I mean, it says by referral only. So do you want to share anything more about, like, if someone does want to work with you guys, they need to know someone who knows you? Or
Will, you're listening. You're listening to him. He knows us.
Yeah.
He'll put you guys in touch.
There's a little bit of method to that madness. I do want to express this. We have a bias for working with really serious people. And what that means is they're really serious about their business. They really care about it. We have a client right now. We require that founders show up. In this case, the CEO shows up to every single call, whether he's on his phone or not. Chief revenue shows up. A chief revenue officer shows up to every single call. Head of sales shows up to call. He brings salespeople to the call. They rotate in and out. Like, people are engaged. They are constantly sending us material. They came extremely well prepared to every single call. They are a company that has sold their product to 400 companies across Europe. They're coming to the United States. They are a global brand. They were referred to us by another friend of theirs, somebody that I knew through various channels. The reason we want this through referrals is, if you're willing to take the effort to reach out to somebody and say, I really want to talk to those guys, that's our little screen for, the taking out the green M&Ms, right? You're serious enough about this that you're going to try and you're going to make the effort. We don't just have an email, because otherwise we'll get a bunch of emails. Oh, can you help me sell? Can you do this? Can you do that? Right? You get put in the work, and we will put in great work for you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Alex, Ilya, thank you guys so much for joining today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Really appreciate it.
All right. TruePMF.com. Check them out. And you'll need to find a referral, someone to refer you.
You're going to be busy, Will.